If you enjoy real horror and true dark tales like this, do not forget to subscribe and like, but only if you are brave enough to keep listening. They call it the witness room, but I've always thought of it as something more delicate than that. It's not just a place to watch the beginning of a process. For some families, it is the last moment. They get to say goodbye in a way that feels real. No more hospital, no more tubes, just quiet, sterile closure. Cremation is controlled, methodical, dignified in its own way. I looked up and saw her frozen in place. I saw it. We're trained for signs of life, no matter how unlikely. No pulse, no breathing, body temperature, cold, rigor fully past. There was nothing medically possible that could explain voluntary movement. And yet, her face, she wasn't the type to look for drama. About the thin line between reflex and farewell. The kind that sinks into your bones and leaves you wondering about the moment before the moment. And that image, that quiet flutter, she swore it never really left. Not her, not me, not the room. Or maybe something else, less clinical, a last acknowledgement. A final wink, goodbye. Sometimes I wonder, is it possible for something deep in the nervous system to spark one last time? Like a final flicker before the current dies for good. She looked haunted, like what she'd seen had taken something from her. She didn't stay for ignition. She said it fluttered, like a blink. I kept my voice steady, professional. Can look like motion or maybe a small shift from tissue loosening. But she just nodded, distant, like she heard me but didn't believe a word. Neither did Marcus. They left silently, no final words, no second glance. From movement due to post-mortem muscle release, to phantom noises from nearby equipment, but an eye-opening. Just one, then closed again. I've heard a lot in this of everything that's different. Hand gripping the viewing glass like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Marcus moved to her side immediately. She said something I couldn't hear. He turned pale. I stepped out of the control area, thinking maybe she was going to faint or needed to sit down. But before I could even speak, she looked me dead in the eye and whispered. His eye opened. She stood there quietly when the chamber door slid open. Her brother stood a few feet back, arms crossed, biting the inside of his cheek. I watched them through the side window while prepping the ignition sequence. I always give families a few moments before pressing the start. Let them sit with it. Let them say goodbye. She never came back to pick them up herself, not for the urn, not for the paperwork, not even to verify the remains. I tried calling once for a confirmation. No answer. We mailed everything out 2 weeks later. That was 4 years ago. I've thought about it often. Replayed the footage. We have internal security cams for compliance, not public viewing, and there was no clear movement, no sudden change on camera. But I also know those cameras recorded limited frame rates. If something subtle happened, a twitch, a micro shift, it could have been missed. I've been a crematory operator for almost 20 years. I've seen all kinds of reactions in that room. Stoic silence, sudden sobs, whispered apologies. A retired fire marshal, the kind of man you could tell didn't go easy on himself. Even the occasional joke from someone trying to keep it together. But this one stuck with me in a way that others didn't. It was a Thursday afternoon in late October, the kind of day where the wind cuts a little sharper and the air smells like wet leaves and smoke. No trauma, no visible tension, just the stillness that comes with finality. Andrea had requested to witness the start of the cremation. She said it was important that her dad was terrified of the idea of being left alone in the dark. If she didn't stay with him through the first part, it'd feel like she'd failed him. We had a small family coming in, a woman named Andrea and her younger brother Marcus. Their father had passed 2 days earlier. Massive stroke, no warning. Just collapsed while making coffee. He was in his early 70s. Just the quiet hum of machinery and the stories people leave behind. But I know this Andrea never came back. Solid build, calloused hands, still had soot stains on his fingers from working on old furniture in the garage. We'd cleaned him up and positioned him carefully in the cremation chamber, hands folded, features relaxed. I gave them the usual safety briefing, told them what to expect. No glass shattering, no flames leaping out. That's when it happened. Andrea suddenly gasped loud, sharp, like someone had stepped on her foot. I didn't respond at first, just blinked. I went in to check, not because I believed her outright, but because I had to. I gently told her it was likely a visual illusion. Sometimes the way the light reflects on the cornea, combined with moisture changes. We sent the ashes by courier. What stays with me isn't what I saw, it's what she felt. The kind of fear that doesn't scream. I don't have answers. The next case came a few days later. It was a Tuesday morning, a quiet shift. I'd already handled 2 scheduled cases by noon, both straightforward, no anomalies. Then came Mr. Brainer. mid-60s, listed as a retired structural engineer. Natural causes. The temperature curve hit the target within the expected window. We typically monitor for irregularities like flame dropout, gas inconsistencies, or anything that would suggest improper combustion. But the screen showed stable flow, good oxygen, mixed ideal conditions. Still, something felt off. But the implanted was standing perfectly upright, not leaning, not wedged balanced on top of a small cluster of femur fragments, like someone had taken the time to position it deliberately, only no one had touched it. Usually, when you cremate a body, it reduces down in predictable phases. Tissues go first, organs char and collapse inward. Flow rates were solid, no system error, no external tampering, just a hip implant standing upright like a monument. The kind of repetition that either wears you down or sharpens your focus. For me, it was always the latter. I've never minded that. The machines hum, the air stays still, and the silence sits honest. The body was a middle-aged man, passed from natural causes, cardiac, if memory serves. Routine case. I finished the prep by 10:32 p.m., then moved him into the holding unit for morning processing. The next morning, our director asked me to step into the office. He doesn't usually call unless the room I'm talking about is our prep space. Fluorescent lit, lined with stainless steel. There's a single mounted camera above the corner where the wash station meets the supply wall. It's not for show. It's policy, chain of custody, verification, liability. We don't review footage unless something's been flagged. But that night, it was flagged. I found purpose in the quiet mechanics of it, checking IDs, confirming paperwork, prepping the chamber, tracking temperature rise. It's not glamorous, but it matters. You handle people at their most vulnerable, when they can't speak for themselves. You owe them precision, respect. Later that week, I looked up Mr. Brainer's file again. There wasn't much, no religious rituals, no ceremonial instructions, but there was one odd note under special considerations. Deceased was adamant about structural balance in all things, even in death. Requested minimal disruption to symmetry. I've seen thousands of implants, knees, hips, even spinal rods scatter across the tray like dropped silverware. They don't balance. I remember how that implant looked, not placed, not dropped. And ever since that day, whenever I process a case with implants, I pause for just a second longer before I close the chamber door. Because sometimes this work doesn't end when the flame shuts off. Some things in this line of work stay with you, not because they're loud or dramatic, but because they just won't stop quietly tapping at your attention. He's been here 10 years. Sharp guy, doesn't spook easily. It's not stuck, he said. He gently blew air across it with his breath. It didn't budge. It wasn't melted into place or magnetized, it was balanced. Balanced in a way that shouldn't be possible, given what that chamber does to everything inside it. I didn't say a word, just pointed. He looked down, blinked, then said, "Did you do that?" Not in that heat, not under those conditions. I stood there staring at it for a full minute. No music, no chatter, just the hum of the blower fan outside, and the quiet tick of cooling metal. You're left with bone and metal. It's clinical, but there's a kind of symmetry in how it all breaks down. Standard paperwork. The internal chamber cam used to monitor progress showed odd pockets of unburnt matter. Nothing large, but inconsistent. Patchy, uneven. I tried adjusting airflow slightly. I waited. Still didn't resolve. The process took longer than normal by at least 20 minutes, but again, nothing drastic. No alarms. No clear malfunction. Just a burn that didn't want to settle right. The medical examiner cleared him. His daughters signed off everything neatly. I followed procedure exactly, preheat the retort, then position the body tray for optimal airflow. Mr. Briner had a left hip implant, titanium alloy. We did the ID verification, tagged him, and slid him into holding to await processing. Nothing unusual when it was his turn. Confer internal temperature, noted in the report, so I made a mental note of that. Implants usually show up post. They're durable, you toss them into the metal recovery bin, log the weight, and move on. Not horror movie strange, just impossible to explain with logic. The burns started normally, but about 45 minutes in, I noticed something strange. I let the cool-down cycle finish naturally, waited the usual interval, then geared up to open the chamber. Now, here's where it gets strange, not dramatic. When I pulled out the tray, I saw what you'd expect: conformed bone, powdered ash, and what remained of the hip implant. The chamber's turbulence, even during a normal burn, would have knocked it over. Then I stepped back and called over another tech, Danny. He crouched to inspect it. We bagged the implant like we always do, but I kept thinking about how it got like that. We checked the logs. Temp never dipped. I don't know if that's just coincidence maybe, but every time I think about it, there's a certain rhythm to working in a crematory. Our facility runs a 2-person rotation on late shifts, especially when things pile up over the weekend. But some nights, it's just me. I'd been the only person on the schedule logged in, door badge scanned. It's something serious in proper paperwork, family inquiry, stuff like that. But this time, he just turned the monitor toward me and pressed play on the overnight feed. At first I thought it was nothing, and behind it, distinct but separate, was the second one. It lingered. I counted 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. This place doesn't pretend. No monitors, no gentle music, no relatives holding on to hope. It's the end of the line. People come here with their last wishes tucked in envelopes or whispered over phone calls, and then they leave in boxes small enough to carry in one hand. 5 seconds. 2 heavy doors and a push bar separate it from the rest of the prep area. It's insulated for sound and heat, not because of anything superstitious, but because cremation requires a precision most people don't understand. Then it faded. No movement toward the wall, no natural dissolution, like when someone rounds a corner. It just stopped being that. Just me walking across the prep room at 10:19 p.m., gloved up, arms low, no hurry. The outer doors hadn't opened. Motion sensors didn't trip. The camera was tested the next day. No defects, no lens ghosting. Some people joked, said it was a trick of the mind stress. Maybe long hours, grief in the walls. But I've watched enough footage to know what I saw. There's no terror in it. No flickering lights, no cold spot or gust of wind. Just an extra shadow that doesn't belong to anybody. I still do that shift. Still walk that same stretch. I don't flinch, I don't hurry, but I don't linger either. Because there's something about being followed by something that has no weight, no footsteps, no face. Something that watches but never leaves the room. No irregularities in the wiring. We even checked the ambient lighting. Nothing that could have thrown a double shadow. And it wasn't just that night. Over the next few weeks, it happened twice more. Always on late shifts. Always when someone walked near that same table. One shadow, then a second following. Echoing but never quite in sync. Never fully attached. You can see me pass the table, pause briefly to adjust the drape over the remains, then continue toward the door. But then came the shadow. It didn't move with me. It moved after me, delayed by maybe half a second, but it matched the height, the shape. It bent where knees should bend. It turned its head only. I didn't. It looked like someone was following me, just a pace behind. Only no one was there. I remember the director paused the video, zoomed in frame by frame. You could see my shadow cast across the tile. I checked the timestamp. It matched my written log, my badge scan, everything. There was no one else inside. We started calling it the double, quietly, just between staff. There is something about the quiet in a crematory that is different from a funeral home or a hospital. Not eerie, just final. The furnace room sits at the back of the facility. Temperature, timing, ventilation, ash processing, all of it demands focus. It's not a place for wandering thoughts. But then came it started maybe 2-3 winters ago, cold season, when the steel of the retorts holds the chill, even when the fires aren't burning. The first time, it was Gary, our night guard. He came into the office after 3:00 a.m. Solo shift, pale, but trying to brush it off. Said he thought he heard someone talking in the furnace room, muffled, faint, one night, during an overnight prep shift. I left the furnace room door, not empty, just full of things we'll never understand. Some say it's residual energy, some say it's coincidence, maybe it's just humanity bleeding through the walls of the last room on Earth where people are allowed to be completely still. But I'll tell you this, no one hears the voice. If they aren't paying attention, you have to be still, alone. And when it starts, it doesn't sound like someone calling out. It sounds like someone remembering. I think it's the echo of grief. The last conversations that never got to finish, the ones whispered into hospice pillows or left unsaid on hospital monitors. I just slightly enough to see the edge of the stainless steel casing and the red ready light above the unit. No one else was in the building. I stood still, listened. It started again just outside range, like a conversation you catch at a restaurant booth beside you, where you can't quite make out the topic. But no, it's not about you. Like someone having a low phone conversation behind the wall. We laughed, told him he needed sleep, and nudged it open fully. Gone. Just the tick of the ceiling fan. The steady hum of the emergency exit sign. It's become routine now. The team doesn't talk about it much anymore, not because we're scared. This place doesn't hold fear exactly. And over time, You start to respect that weight. Said maybe one of the office radios kicked on by mistake. But then Kim heard it. 2 weeks later, early morning shift. It was subtle at first. A low murmur, a moan, not groaning. Nothing dramatic, just a low cadence. Like two people having a private discussion just beyond a thin wall. Never aggressive, never threatening, just present. But when I'd open the furnace room door, silence. The kind of silence that isn't natural, like sound had been vacuumed out of the air. There's no one buried beneath the floor, no tragic history tied to the building. We're a commercial facility, not a converted mansion or an old hospital. We cremate pets on one side, humans on the other. There's a clear schedule, digital logs, chain of custody. This place runs clean, but the talking kept happening. She said it was like a conversation just below hearing level. Magnet check for pins or dental metalland. The voice would begin, always muffled, always from the furnace room. Sometimes it sounded male, other times more neutral, but never sharp, never pleading. Just a quiet, steady exchange of unintelligible words. We had the system checked via sensors, air vents, security monitors. No interference, no signals bouncing in, nothing on the audio log. The mic in the processing room even failed to register any audio anomaly, just a flat line of ambient hum, like the sound wasn't being picked up by machines at all. No words, just rhythm and tone. And always, it stopped the second she opened the door. I told her it could be pipe resent secco off the chamber when it's cooling. Metal expands and contracts weirdly when the room shifts temperature fast. But she just gave me a look the kind people give when they've seen something they can explain, but no better than to press. That week, I started noticing it too. Sometimes, I'd be halfway through processing remains bone fragment, ash filtration, and here's the strange part. Nobody hears it when the furnace is running. Only when the retort is idle, cool, quiet. I walk to the door slowly, deliberately. The silence of the crematory is a sacred kind. Maybe it's not ghost. I never used to believe the dead could leave something behind, something more than just ashes. But I do now. I've worked in cremation for nearly 12 years. It's not glamorous. No one chooses this line of work because they love it, it chooses you. A body came in under a Jane Doe tag note, next of kin, no ID, no funeral arrangements. Just a bag, a timestamp, and a note. Found in woods, off Highway 32. No trauma, cause unknown. Clean clothes, no signs of distress. But something about her felt off, like her expression hadn't quite settled into death. Eyes closed, yes, but her mouth, it almost seemed like it wanted to say something. It was the kind of thing you brush off in this business. You either develop a steel stomach and a quiet mind, or you leave by week 2. This time it was an older man, natural death, signed off by his daughter, but she was insistent, and something in her voice stopped me from saying no. He looked at Peacecom even. She stared at him, then bent down and whispered something I couldn't hear. When she turned to leave, she said nothing, just walked out. I zipped the bag and proceeded like normal. I paused the process and checked the screen. The chamber cam showed something I couldn't explain. I knew the family vaguely, they came from the next town over. Quiet people. The daughter stayed during intake, eyes glassy, polite but distant. I stayed. I learned the sounds of the burners, the smell of bone dust, the weight of grief from people I never even met. I learned to treat everybody with reverence. What I didn't learn, what I was never prepared for, was how to handle what came after. Everything seemed fine until the chamber reached 1,200 degrees. That's when the alarm went off. It started 6 months ago. I logged her in, sealed the chamber, and began the preheat cycle, like always. I stepped out into the prep room, wiped my hands, and glanced at the monitor that showed internal temperature. It had stored flatlined at 982 degrees. Crematories have backup generators. We prepped for everything. I walked down the hallway, flashlight in hand, to reboot the power box. But before I got there, I heard it. A metallic clang. Then another. Then the high-pitched whine of the chamber. Door unlocked. I sprinted back. Movement. Like something inside the body was squirming, twisting beneath the skin. The image flickered, then turned to static. Then the alarms went dead. The door was open. Wide open. The power was still out. The chamber, which takes hours to cool, was suddenly stone cold. No heat, no smoke, no ash, and the slab was empty. She was gone. But in the ash was something wrong, burned into the concrete. Circular, precise, too symmetrical to be an accident. and it was still glowing faintly red. I didn't touch it. I didn't even sweep the remains right away. I just stood there, staring at it, stomach tight. I know how that sounds. I double-checked the logs, reviewed the security feed. The feed cut out exactly when the power did. Nothing recorded after. Maintenance insisted the outage was internal freak voltage loop. No explanation. And as for the missing body, the coroner chalked it up to clerical error, blamed the transport team. But I saw her. I put her in myself. That was the first one. The second came 2 weeks later. "Can I see him one last time?" she asked. "We don't usually allow that, not inside the crematory floor." I unzipped the bag, revealing her father's face. This time, the power held. The temperature climbed. Foreign object detected. It happens sometimes. Metal implants. Forgotten jewelry. There was movement, not combustion. I opened the chamber an hour later. The body had fully burned. Bone fragments, ash, standard remains, a symbol. That night I didn't sleep. I kept seeing the girl's empty slab, the man's squirming body, the way the symbol seemed to watch me. I started to dream in heat drive, blistering heat, always. In the dream, I hear the creak of the chamber door. It got worse. Over the next month, small things began to shift. I started hearing footsteps in the hallway after midnight, voices over the intercom system, even though no one else was in the building. Whispers like someone speaking behind glass. I chalked it up to fatigue, maybe guilt, but the final straw happened during a double cremation. It was a couple, husband and wife, died 2 days apart. Natural causes. I loaded their remains, set the timer, and stepped away. The system lets you program both individually, so they burn simultaneously but separately. But this time, the chambers synced. That shouldn't happen. Both units began to hum in perfect unisons, same rise in temperature, and then both doors clicked open on their own. I wake up sweating, my ears ringing like I'm still inside the burn room. And now, I'm starting to see things outside of work, reflections in car windows, figures in my hallway. Inside each was not just bone. He said he had a migraine and didn't want to be near any machinery. When I asked if everything was okay, he hesitated. Then he said, "It's the dreams. I can't handle another one." Then everything went dead, silent not. Even the hum of the cooling fans. Then, a strange hum started. Low at first, almost like tinnitus. Then louder, rhythmic. My heart pounded. The temperature gauge started flashing. 666 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not a preset temperature. It's not even something the software should be able to input. The chamber door began to open on its own, slow, deliberate, creaking louder than it should. There were handprints, charred but visible. Middle-aged man. Was one word smeared, like it had been dragged across the metal. Stay. No family. The tag read, Walter K. Fields. Cardiac arrest. Unclaimed. Standard intake. His body was unusually light, like he was already hollowed out. I moved him onto the gurney and prepped the chamber, as if someone inside had pressed their palms against the metal. The whispers, the symbols, the way the flames sometimes seemed to bend in impossible ways. But what happened last Thursday proved I wasn't just paranoid. Something has crossed over, and it's not finished. But now I think maybe it's a door. Maybe the fire doesn't just consume. Maybe it opens something. I froze. Not pressed like before, these were reaching out of the walls. Dozens of burned, skeletal hands, etched in soot, extended as if begging to pull him in. I pulled Walter's body out, retagged it, and logged it as delayed for inspection. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my clipboard. I was alone. I always am on Sundays. The ashes were there. The bodies had burned. But those handprints weren't part of the process. They were pressed from the inside. I didn't file a report. I didn't say a word. I just swept the floors and went home. Since then, the dreams have worsened. It's like whatever is in those chambers doesn't stay there. Or, the one after I stopped eating, I stopped taking calls. Dan stopped coming in. We haven't spoken since. I don't know if he's okay, or if the dreams finally got to him too. I used to think cremation was an end. That we reduced a body to its purest form, and that was it. Dust to dust, and maybe something is stepping through. I thought I was imagining it. That day, I was covering the night shift because our other operator, Dan, called out last minute. Dan had never mentioned anything like that before, but I knew exactly what he meant. I was alone when the next body came in. As I leaned in to slide the gurney forward, the lights above flickered violently. It was coming from the walls. I stepped back. That's when I saw it. Walter's body hadn't moved, but surrounding it, On the interior metal of the chamber were hands. I slammed the door shut and killed the power. The hum stopped instantly. So did the temperature. That night I locked every door, shut every light, and went home. I thought I could forget it again. But the next morning, the door to chamber 3, the same one, was wide open. Walter's body was gone, and in a chamber, written in thick black ash. I didn't sleep that night. Then I received a note. Not an email, not a call. A handwritten letter on my desk. No postage. It just said, "The ones who burn aren't always the ones who go." No name, no return address. Just that. I tried to quit. I really did. I even wrote my resignation. But when I walked into the manager's office, it was empty. He wasn't there. His desk had a single cremation tag. My name, and the day-to-day's date. The burner's raw, but there's no heat, just darkness, feeding on it, waiting for cracks to open. And I think that's what cremation really is. It's not a process of peace. It's a portal. I'm not alone in there. I can't move. Stories about people seeing faces in the smoke, voices coming through the exhaust vents, burn patterns shaped like eyes. Now, I believe every single one of them, all of them marked with strange anomalies, all of them unclaimed or forgotten. Like the system was feeding something the world didn't want to remember. And outside the small glass window, I see myself looking in, watching. Something we've been doing for centuries without realizing the cost. I haven't been back since, but I keep having the same nightmare every night now. I'm standing inside the chamber. I don't know how it got there, but I know what it means. I think I've been marked. That maybe the dead I've helped cremate weren't all gone. That something ancient has been watching through the fire. I see the orange glow dancing in my hallway shadows. I smell smoke in my sheets, in my clothes. And I know the chamber is waiting. There are stories I've heard from other operators, ones I dismiss. It's not just a job anymore, it's something else. I've kept a log of every case that felt wrong, 23 so far. 23 bodies that triggered the same chain of events. There's one final entry I haven't added yet. It's mine. Because when I looked in the mirror this morning, I saw the mark right over my heart. A small, burned symbol. Faint. Circular. The same one that appeared in the ash of the second body. It wasn't there last night. I didn't burn myself. They've chosen me. And tonight, I hear the burners humming, even though I'm home. The fire doesn't forget, and neither do they. People think working in a crematorium is quiet, maybe even peaceful. They imagine sterile rooms, humming machinery, and silence filled only by the whir of ventilation. That's how I used to see it, too. Before I understood what I was really working with. Before I realized that some things don't burn the way they should. But the van pulled in anyway. Headlights off. Driver in a dark hooded jacket that obscured their face. They signed no paperwork. Just left the body on a gurney at the back door and drove off. I've been a crematory operator for nearly 8 years. I know this job inside out. I remember double checking, thinking maybe the system glitched. But no, there was nothing. Reported it. But honestly, the burners sputtered at first, then flared to life without my input. The control panel was still idle, waiting for the start command, sealing itself like it was being held from the inside. I stood there frozen as the temperature passed 1,400 degrees, but the chamber glowed orange, like it had a mind of its own. The temperature climbed rapidly faster than I'd ever seen, and the flame roared, unnaturally loud. But no, this was a voice, high-pitched human or almost human. The sound vibrated through the walls, a rasping, anguished cry that didn't stop, didn't fade, just kept going and going. I was too tired. It had been a long shift, and part of me just wanted to get it over with. I wheeled her to retort to. It was as if Marion E. Dorsey had never existed before she arrived here. The filters in retort 2 kept clogging with something sticky, something that smelled like burnt oil and vinegar. And there were the sounds. Whispers, late at night, breathing right behind you when no one was there. I've seen hundreds of cremations, logged thousands of hours near the no metal surgical pit. They sat on my shelf for 2 weeks until the label peeled off, and I couldn't remember which urn was hers. Eventually, I placed it in storage with the others marked unidentified. No residue. That's impossible. There's always something left. Always. Even teeth. Sometimes. But here, just a fine gray dust. Already swept to the corners as if something had moved through it. I've handled bodies in every condition. Illnesses, even the occasional John Doe. None of that prepared me for what happened 2 months ago. The first thing that stood out was how the body arrived. It was late past 11 p.m., which was unusual on its own. We don't typically process deliveries after dark. The tag simply read, Marion E. Dorsey. No kin, no ceremony. Her skin was pale, almost grey, and dry as parchment. Not unusual for the deceased, but hers had the strange look of something drained, like the blood and moisture hadn't just left but been taken. I logged it in manually, since there was no digital record. I should have flagged it. The moment I slid her into the chamber, something was on. The machine didn't ignite the way it usually did. I hit the emergency kill switch. Nothing happened. Instead, the door locked not automatically, not as a system failed. It slammed shut with a metallic bang. Then the screaming started. At first I thought it was the metal warping under heat. I backed out of the room, slammed the viewing window cover shut, and refused to look in. When the screaming finally ended after what felt like 20 minutes, I returned to find the chamber dark and cool. The temperature had reset itself. The door was unlocked. Inside was nothing but ash and bone fragments. I bagged the ash and sealed the container. No one ever claimed her remains. After that night, strange things started happening at the crematory. The temperature panels would spike suddenly, even when no one was operating a chamber. Bags of remains would be found misplaced or sometimes opened. I stopped using Retort 2 entirely. But then I started dreaming of her. Every night, Marion Dorsey would be there, standing at the edge of my bed, just far enough in the shadows that I couldn't see her face. Her hands would be clenched at her sides, fingernails blackened and cracked. She never moved. I'd see her reflection in the chamber doors. I'd catch glimpses of her behind racks of urns. I heard her name whisper from the vents. Never spoke. I turned and walked out, called in sick for the next 3 days. Just watched. I began sleeping in the break room, then eventually not at all. The dreams turned into hallucinations. One night I stayed late, trying to finish some backlog files. When the power flickered, I heard the unmistakable hiss of gas lines priming. I hadn't used it in weeks. The keypad was locked, the burner disabled, the gas shut off, but the door was open wide, inviting. I didn't approach it. When I returned, the chamber had burned something. All we found was a small patch of soot outside Retort, to no signs of entry, no alarm triggered. Still works perfectly, never needs maintenance. I kept hearing footsteps behind me, but every time I turned, the place was still. At 3:09 a.m., I heard a distinct knock 3 times from inside the sealed chamber of Retort 2. Never breaks down. And every few weeks, we find a new pile of ash, unclaimed, unexplained. And this time, carved into the inside wall, deep into the fire brick, was a single word. There were ash tracers in the bin, but no paperwork, no delivery, no tags. It was a ring, a wedding ring, scorched black. The band warped from heat. That night, I had the worst dream of all. Inside, barely visible, was an engraving. 2MD, forever, J. Marion Dorsey, still. And yet, there it was. He laughed it off, said I'd been working too much night shift, and maybe I needed time off. Maybe I did. It was corrupted, twisted. The walls were blackened and cracked, the air thick with smoke. Every retort door was wide open, and something was moving inside them. Slow, dragging, like someone crawling through soot. Every second between 2:03 a.m. and 2:47 a.m. was static. Her skin was charred and peeling, her jaw slack, revealing scorched gums and blackened teeth. Her eyes, or what was left of them, locked onto mine. Heavy, she raised one skeletal hand and pointed at my chest. I checked the camera footage, waiting, listening. I told my supervisor everything, but then he disappeared. No call, no resignation. His car was still in the lot. Nothing. It had simply vanished. It was the only way I could hold on to some kind of sanity. The entries were erratic at first, mostly one-line notes. Scent of burning hair with no fire, or retort to humming when unplugged. But they grew longer. Since then, we've gone through 2 more supervisors. Neither stays long. And retort to, I started keeping a journal after that night, writing down everything I saw or heard. One night, about a week after my supervisor vanished, I stayed behind to clean. The facility was empty, the overhead lights dim. I didn't check it. But the next morning, in the ashtray, I found something. It wasn't a bone. It wasn't metal. I'd already bagged her ashes. I'd already sealed the urn. I shouldn't have found anything else. That's when I knew for certain. Marion wasn't gone. I took the ring home. Stupid, I know. But I wanted proof. Something real to hold on to. I was back in the crematorium, but it was different. Marianne stood at the center, no longer in shadows. I woke up gasping. The ring was gone. I tore apart the apartment, checked every crevice, every surface. When I returned to the crematorium that night, it was waiting for me, sitting on my workstation, still scorched, still engraved. That was when I stopped questioning things. I stopped reporting them, too. I just started watching. Then, last week, something new happened. We received a late-night delivery. The tag was blank. No name, no case number, no instructions, just a body in a bag. When I unzipped it, I froze. It was my old supervisor, the one who'd vanished. His face was half burned, but it was him. Same scar above the brow, same chipped molar I remembered from when he laughed. There was no record of death, no police report, nothing. He had simply returned, silent and lifeless. I put him in retort 1. No way in hell I was using 2 again. But the panel refused to respond. The screen blinked, read, and locked out all commands. Retort 2 opened on its own. Gas lines primed. Igniters clicked. A high-pitched scream pierced the air, but I wasn't sure if it was his or mine. I backed away slowly, but the gurney rolled forward, as if pulled, and slid into the chamber. The door slammed shut. No fragments. I walked out into the parking lot, shaking, drenched in sweat. But when I reached my car, the windows were fogged. In the condensation on the glass, someone had traced letters with their fingertip. No trace he'd ever been there. After the process ended, there was no ash. Only the ring remained. Again. This time, it sat neatly atop the control panel, but the engraving had changed. Now it read, "Your Nix." I left. Still watching, that was last night. I haven't gone back since. I don't know if it's Marion or something that came with her. All I know is this. Something old. Something that uses fire, not to destroy, but to open a door. I don't know what's inside that retort. The dead don't always stay dead, and some fires don't cleanse. They invite. They call out to others. They feed. They grow. There's something wrong in that place. And that door, I think it's open now. People think the scariest part of my job is the bodies, the ashes, the fire, the finality of it all. They think standing next to a roaring retort, turning flesh and bone into dust, would break a normal person. But the fire doesn't scare me. Death doesn't scare me. It's a lonely kind of work. Just you, a clipboard, and the hum of the gas lines. December, the week before Christmas. Our county facility had been overrun due to a flu outbreak, and we were processing more bodies than usual. Double shifts, little rest. A blur of toe tags and white sheets, but it pays well, and nobody talks back. Or at least, they're not supposed to. Not anymore. Computers fine. Logs clean. When the day shift arrived, I asked if anyone had dropped a new case off during the night. What scares me are the ones who don't want to go. I've been a crematory operator for 9 years now. Quiet job, night shifts mostly. I found the gurney in the loading bay, fully wrapped, with a toe tag written in red ink. Unusual, since we always used black. No paperwork, no ID, the tag just read. These whispers knew my name. They came from the vents, from the cracks in the tiles, from inside the damn retorts. On a Thursday night, just past 2 a.m., a body came in that wasn't on the manifest. No record of a delivery. I tried calling my supervisor. Midnight came. I loaded the body into retort 3, the newest, cleanest chamber, and initiated the sequence. He told me I was just overtired. Burnout, he said. Occupational hazard. No missing patient. No one knew what I was talking about. But when I tried to scan the barcode, the system crashed. Every terminal, every screen. The gas alarms didn't sound. The override wouldn't respond. Just static. The delivery truck pulled up out back, but the driver didn't come inside. Do not burn before midnight. I thought it was a prank. Maybe one of the new hires messing with me. I stood in that sterile white room, surrounded by stainless steel and ashtrays, and I swear, for the first time ever, the temperature dropped. It wasn't like the building's heat had gone out. It felt targeted, focused. No ID, no burn. I left the body untouched and wheeled it into holding, like something cold was watching me, breathing on my neck. I told myself to follow protocol. By morning, everything was back to normal. They checked the schedule. There was nothing. The shit-covered gurney was still there, still sealed, still tagged, "Do not burn before midnight." I left it again that day, but that night, when I returned for my shift, the tag had changed. Now it read, "Do not refuse." That's when the whispers started. At first I thought it was the ventilation. White noise tricks your ears after too many hours alone. But this was different. One voice repeated itself, over and over. "We gave you warmth. Now, give it back. I barely slept that week. On the fourth night, I gave in, and that's when everything went wrong. The ignition failed, then the lights cut out. The security cameras looped a frozen frame of me standing there, hand on the door, mouth open in confusion, over and over, and then the chamber lit up on its own. Not with flame, not at first. A pale glow seeped from the seams of the door, a sickly blue-white hue, like moonlight filtered through smoke, but not from the burners. It erupted outward, through the crevices, licking the ceiling, leaving no scorch marks but turning the air thick with the scent of burning lilies and rotted earth. It pulsed, once, twice, like a heartbeat. Then the fire came. I stumbled backward, wrinkled, eyes sunken, standing in the same room, wearing the same uniform. But my mouth was sewn shut with wire, and behind me, rows of bodies stretched into darkness, all of them watching, smiling. The sound was indescribable, not just mechanical, not just the roar of combustion. It was screaming. Thousands of overlapping voices, wailing, begging, some laughing, sometimes closed. But the fire, the wrong fire. It's always burned. I watched the temperature spike. It shouldn't have been possible minus to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. The steel should have melted, but it held. I was told I must have hallucinated the whole thing, but the mirror piece was still in my pocket. When it finally ended, there were no ashes, no bone fragments, no trace of cloth or metal or flesh, just a pile of white sand. Once, I opened the double doors, expecting to find a late delivery. Instead, I saw wet footprints, leading from the back entrance all the way to Retort 3. The floors had just been cleaned. There was no rain, no snow. I checked the logs. He had been processed. Ashes delivered. Everything by the book. And one thing more. A piece of mirror. Small, square, unburned. I decided to stay past my shift, beyond midnight, hidden in the shadows of the supply closet across from Retort 3. If something was going to happen, I wanted to see it with my own eyes, but they stopped abruptly, right in front of the chamber, as if whatever made them had simply vanished into thin air. No explanation. To quit. But something rooted me there, like the place wouldn't let me go. Just a note in my locker. When I picked it up, I saw something I can't forget. I still hear it at night, from the fireplace. The souls, I hadn't told anyone, hadn't written a report, and yet someone, or something, knew. Not my reflection. Not exactly. It was me, but older. The image vanished the second I blinked. I left early that night. The next day, no one believed me. Again, no records. No temperature spike. The system logs showed no cremation after 11:30 p.m. That was the start. Since then, the retort has activated on its own 4 times. Always around midnight. Always with no input. Sometimes I find the chamber open in the morning. One morning I came in to find the control panel replaced. Brand new hardware. They're not yours to keep. There's more. Much more. The note in my locker haunted me all day. They're not yours to keep. What did that mean? The ashes. That week, the incidents escalated. I started hearing the roll of gurney wheels in the hall, outside my office when no one else was there. No body. I followed them, heart hammering, flashlight in hand. I told myself to walk away. One night, I received a call from a woman who claimed her husband had been cremated at our facility 3 months earlier. She asked a strange question. Is he still there? I thought she meant spiritually or emotionally. People grieve in strange ways, but she clarified. His voice. That call was the last straw. The facility went quiet after 11:45 p.m. Lights dimmed. The air shifted. At exactly 12 hours, 0 minutes and 13 seconds, Retorts 3 powered on. No input. The fans spun up. Gas valves hissed, but the temperature gauge didn't register heat. It showed cold sub-zero readings. No delivery. No sound. Impossible. And then the door opened. Briefly. Translucent. Twisted in agony. The smoke was sucked back into the retort like it had never existed. Silence returned, mouths wide as if screaming, but no sound came from them. Then one of them turned to look at me, its eyes locked on mine. Hollow, but aware. There was no one on the gurney, but smoke blacker than coal and thick as tar poured out from inside the chamber and began to pool at the floor, rising like fog. I held my breath until I found his personal logbook in a sealed evidence envelope. The last page read, "Every instinct screamed to run, but I stood frozen, In the smoke, faces formed. It mouthed 3 words. "Let us go." I stumbled backward, knocking over a mop bucket, and just like that, the door slammed shut. But the message stayed with me. Old manifests. Incident reports. They're buried in a manila folder from 1987. I found a name. Dr. Samuel Carrigan. I say prayers, even if I don't know what they believed. It helps. The fire stays quiet. Without peace, all trapped, all still aware. The next morning, I visited the facility archives, dug through years of paperwork. A reminder, an anchor, a warning. He'd been the director of the crematory decades ago, died in a fire, allegedly an accident, but the margins of the file told another story. Notes scribbled by former staff. Chambers activate without fuel. Voices when alone. He burned them too fast, too many, too soon. It didn't make sense. Some flames don't cleanse, they trap. What burns here doesn't always leave. Sat on the floor, lit a single candle, and I whispered. That night, I went back to retort 3. I brought the mirror piece with me. I opened the chamber. Who's still here? What I saw in that chamber will never leave me. Not just the faces, not just the fire. I saw every person we'd ever processed improperly. People cremated without right. That is what no one tells you about cremation. It is supposed to be a release, but when done wrong, too fast, too cold, or without intention, it binds them, anchors them, it concentrates, and when there's no one left to remember them, they remember each other, they remember us. Since that night, I've changed how I do things. Slower burns, candles, I speak their names, aloud. But some nights, the chamber still lights up on its own. Some nights, the whispers return, and sometimes, they ask for me by name. I keep a mirror piece taped inside my locker. Because people think cremation is about fire, but really, it's about memory, about letting go, and some don't want to be forgotten. So if you ever find yourself in a crematory late at night, and the chamber turns on by itself, don't look inside, don't listen to the voices, and above all, whatever you do, don't forget their names. I never believed in ghosts, not until the night the body sat up in retort 4. Most people can't stomach it. The heat, the silence, the way the ashes always feel too heavy. But I found comfort in the routine. Death didn't scare me. The living, sometimes, but not the dead. My name's Eli, and I've worked in cremation for nearly 12 years, until the night of February 2nd. No family, no religious affiliation, the kind of person who slips away without much ceremony. She died in hospice care and had been transported by our usual crew. I'd heard people saying, corpses breathe, or blink, it's just nerves, reflex, gas, escaping, nothing unusual, something wet, old, like flooded carpet. Locked the chamber, pressed the ignition, except when they brought her in, the driver looked shaken. The woman brought in was Jane Keller, 49 years old. She was heavy, he muttered, like a puppet yanked upright, eyes wide open, mouth gaping. I stumbled back, gasping, but the monitor still read 73 degrees Fahrenheit. No fire, no heat, no body, no ashes. The chamber was cold, not even a hint of combustion, just a sitting up. Jane Keller was the only body scheduled for that day. She had been entered, processed. I saw her face in the flames. I heard whispers from the chamber vents, and in my dream, I saw the message again. Logger's cremation completed. I laughed. They usually are. No man, she felt like she was looking at me, even in the bag. Body vanished. Mid-burn. The manager blamed a log error, said she must have been moved by someone else. But security footage told a different story. The lights in the room dimmed slightly, not unheard of, but noticeable. The indicator light above the panel flickered once, twice, then turned solid green. I shrugged it off. Still, I felt a chill when I wheeled her into the prep room. The air was thick, the smell, not decay, not antiseptic. I prepped her like usual, checked the tags, logged the ID number, logged the weight, 154 pounds. Only problem was, I had checked that weight already when she came in. She had been 142. I rechecked the scale. 154. I checked the bag. No added materials, nothing unusual. I was alone, or at least, I thought I was. When I opened the chamber door for retort 4, no way anything could move inside once the burners engaged. But the heat sensors weren't registering. I slid the gurney in, and that's when she moved. I didn't see it, not directly, but I heard it, a metallic thud, like a hand slapping steel. I jumped back. The chamber was sealed. I stared at the control panel. Temperature, 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Impossible. The ignition had fired. The chamber was on. I stepped back up and looked through the heat-resistant glass. And that's when she sat up. Her spine curved forward in a snap. Then the glass fogged from the inside. A message smeared across it. You have her. I hit the emergency release. Opened the chamber door. But she was gone. Nothing. I checked the logs. No other entries. But there were no remains. I reported it. But what could I say? From the moment she arrived to the moment I hit that button, I was alone. Except I wasn't. That night, my dreams were thick with smoke. 3 nights in, I broke. I called Marcus, one of the night shift techs who trained me when I first started. He'd been in the industry 30 years. A lifer. The kind of guy who kept a rosary in his locker, but never talked about God. Doesn't matter if you think it's cold or dead. Once it's claimed, it stays in there. I said some spirits don't burn. They bind. They attach to flame, to flesh, to memory. That cremation isn't always an ending. Then finally, he said, you opened the chamber when it was active. I swallowed. I didn't think it was. You never opened the chamber once. It's marked. Claimed by what? He was silent again. Then, they used to call it a something that doesn't stay dead. Something that can ride the fire. And sometimes, he warned me not to go back. Sometimes, it's a beginning. I could feel the heat licking my skin, but I couldn't scream, couldn't move, only watch as the door closed slowly. And she stood on the other side, smiling. The next night I dreamed of the chamber again, except this time, I was inside it. Only the hum of power in the walls, the scent of burning, sharp, not quite wood, not quite metal, whispering, you burned the wrong one. I woke drenched in sweat, and next to my bed, ashes, real ashes, not dust, not soot. But when I pulled up, the parking lot was empty. The front doors were locked, but heavy, bone-thick remains, just like the trays we pull out after a full burn. I called Marcus again. He didn't answer. I drove to the crematory, thinking maybe I could find answers, figure out if this was all in my head. Except, the back-loading dock door was slightly open. I stepped inside. Silence. I walked past the cold storage, past the prep rooms, into the chamber room. Only one retort was on. Retort 4, which monitor blinked. His ID photo appeared. The same one from his personnel file. Not black, not gray. Active bone. Start time. 11:46 p.m. Body. Marcus Vale IDO 2601. I froze. Marcus. The name scrolled again. I ran to the panel, hit the emergency release. Locked. Override disabled. I screamed, hit the keys, pounded on the door. But the screen just blinked once more. Do not interrupt. He chose her. And then, through the intercom, a voice I knew too well. Her voice. Fire cleans the body, but not the soul. I staggered back. The lights dimmed, and from the vents, smoke began to pour out. White, thick, and cold, like fog off a lake. Inside it, shapes moved. Shadows, hands, faces, pressed to glass. Drifting, silent, mouths open, eyes hollow. They weren't alive, but they weren't dead. They floated toward me, and in the back, Jane still smiling. Only this time, her eyes were black, empty, burning. I turned and ran. Back through the prep room, through cold storage, past the clipboard station, where Marcus's name had been crossed out in red. I made it outside, but when I looked back, the building was gone. Nothing but an empty lot. Chained fence. Overgrown weeds. No power. No lights. Like it had never existed. I drove home in silence. Checked the internet. The address of the crematory was still listed. Still had 5-star reviews. Still had a working phone number. But when I called, a voice answered and said, "This number is no longer in service." That was 3 months ago. Burned every photo, every uniform, every document that tied me to that place. Since then, I've moved 3 times. Changed my phone number. But the ashes keep finding me. In my mailbox. On my windowsill. Under my pillow. And each time, And no, you have her. Sometimes I hear the chamber at night, the hiss of flame, the whisper of breath, the soft thud of hands against steel. I think Marcus knew. I think he offered himself, took her place. But she didn't want him. She wants me. So I don't sleep anymore. I don't light candles. I don't use the oven. No open flames. No heat. Because fire is her door. And every flicker could be her reaching through. I tell this story not to warn you. It's too late for that. I tell it because I don't know how much longer I can hold out. The flames are growing. And tonight, I saw her again. In the reflection of my microwave. Smiling, thank you all for joining me on these journeys. Your support means everything. And I love reading your reactions and personal experiences in the comments. If these stories kept you on the edge of your seat or gave you chills, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more haunting stories. Have you ever experienced something similar, or perhaps you have your own unexplainable story to share? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Below each of your stories adds another layer to our growing community of horror enthusiasts. And if you think someone else might enjoy Good Scared, don't forget to share this video with them. Stay tuned for more spine-chilling stories. And remember, sometimes the scariest tales are the ones that could happen to any of us. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video if you dare.